In this 11th video, I talk about some other events that I lived with the voice that was leading me in November 1996 in a state of partial madness in Morocco. The perpetrators who used these communications at distance are called here Companions 96. In year 1996, I was a civil servant of the Ministry of Interior, namely the administration of Bni Khlef Louisiya, Mayor Santa, Nia Mohammedia and Casablanca in Morocco. In year 1996, I was also a university student in Mohammedia faculty, option French literature, and I was then in the third form. Now I start relating those events. So one night of my madman wandering in November 1996 in Saleh near Rabat, I had been standing alone against a house wall in a deserted street in Tabrikt site, just behind the fence of the old quarry pit near Meknes Road and in the surroundings of High School Plateau and Tana site across the road. Then, unexpectedly, the voice of Companions 96 asked me in French in distinct speech, "Do you accept to communicate with us?" I had replied to the voice in French, "But I don't even know with whom I would communicate." Then the voice let me alone that night, but a terrible new mental confusion followed that communication event. During another night, the voice of Companions 96 was guiding me in Saleh, in Tana site, and the surroundings of Bourgreg River. The voice had been leading me via serious orders, almost at gallop. As it had rained in the days before that night, the voice ordered me to tread in the paddles when they were in my way. At that stage of the controlled wandering and kidnapping, I still had the brown shoes that I wore when I first left Mohammedia around November 10th, 1996. It was then that I established that my shoes and feet were dried instantly as soon as I get my feet out of the paddle's water. That same night, with the same haste, the voice's orders led me down the slope of the street that goes under the rails bridge in Tana site in Saleh. At that exact spot, the voice asked me if I knew somebody who abided there. I replied yes, and I talked then about a secret marriage of a man who abided there. At that reply of mine, the voice's orders took a tone that made me believe that some other organization was following me and that Companion 96 were trying to help me escape from Morocco. At that same spot, and only in my silent thinking, I thought of a relative who had deserted Morocco and had never come back. So I thought then that I was in the same condition as that relative. It was at that instant that an abnormally strong emotion had gripped tightly my throat, and it entirely crippled me. The image that is quoted, that crippling emotion, was the one of Al-Hamima Muhammad, the yoga instructor whose teachings I attended for some months in Casablanca in year 1995. Generally, during those torches period, each time it was a strangling emotion at my throat, there was the image of Al-Hamima Muhammad, the yoga instructor, with that emotion. Now, at the end of this video and story, I say some words on how this story of kidnapping via voices had started. It started in a day around November 10th, 1996. I spent the afternoon of that day with one of my ex-classmates walking in Mohammedia Beach in a state of suspicious silence because I felt that my brain's matter wasn't feeling right. Then at the end of that same day's afternoon, I left my room I abided in Mohammedia El Alia in an abnormal mental state. I first went to the forest Wad al-Malh on the southern western suburb of Mohammedia. From there, at the start of the following night, I headed to the Mayor Santa Bnikhlef, Louisiana, where I used to work in year 1996. Then I went to the Nira forest, Wad Nfifich, 33 kilometers. My first night of madness wandering was spent in that forest without I slept. At sunset period of the following day, I left that forest and I went by the coastal route heading to north. I arrived at Buznika village at night, but I didn't stop there. I went ahead on feet till I arrived at Skhirat village, some 40 kilometers away from Mohammedia. At that night, in Skhirat village, the voice of Companions 96 had communicated with me for the first time. Two new terrible conditions were endured by me there that night in Skhirat. First, an unbearable total physical pain. Second, a total painful mental confusion. So, because of that confusion of my mind, I remembered only that the voice promised me punishment for what I said about myself and how I am when I have an insomnia and when I used the word diarrhea in Arabic to express that state to Companions 96. I also remember that I asked Companions 96 to give me a tender death when the physical pain went on increasing in all my body. The following day, because it started to rain, I went to some offices on a light hill for shelter, and the guard there searched my jacket pockets and found in them my two identity cards, the one of my job and the national one, but he turned them to me along with my post office document for the savings. That guard told me that those offices are part of the Royal Palace buildings, and he suggested to me to go and throw myself in the ocean. From there I went to Skhirat beach And when it started again to rain, I took shelter in an open room there, but the unbearable physical pain gripped all my being again, as it did the night before. The afternoon of that day, at sunset, I arrived in Tmara village on feet near Ribat. There in Tmara, a special psychological torture took place. All my interior monologues, one after the other, were played aloud distinctly, and I heard them either via my ears or directly in my brain via sound waves. I then caught my tongue between my teeth to prevent its bottom from stirring, so that my silent thinking was not put in words under my throat. When I was near a bridge with trees at its side, the voice of Companions 96 told me in Arabic, "Then, as for you, you listen to those beings." They meant the birds, because while walking near the bridge, I halted each time the birds emitted the sound bid, bid. The sound bid means in my mother tongue, the Berber, to stop. Via my ill interpretations, I thought that the birds were telling me to stop for some reason. I spent the following night in the basement of a new building site, but I only faintly slept, and monsters devoured my consciousness all night. The following day, in the afternoon, I arrived to Rabat, the Morocco capital, on feet. It was there that the voice of Companions 96 carried out the first stage of tortures and persecution, as I explained in the previous 10 videos. So the question is, Companions 96 showed me that they knew anything about my life in the past wherever I was, and as I explained it in the three first video, had in their agenda my kidnapping under the cover of partial madness by means of voice communications. So, was who aims to kidnap me to wait till I become mad on my own? Did Companions 96 spike my food or drink or even medicine to induce on me the mental illness so that they can lead me via the voice communication? Will I remain crippled by fear from Companions 96 for the rest of my life? As reference for voice and sounds technology, we have the book Mind Control, The Ultimate Brave New World by Dr. Nick Begish. It is on internet.